Today we're going to be focusing on how to make smooth R&B beats like this. The first thing you want to do is choose a pad that already has those R&B vibes. You want to go for 7th and 9th chords for these beats, also adding dominant 7th chords, which is going to give you that R&B feel. The main key. So there's 4 chords right here, and the biggest key factor in getting this sound is this dominant 7th chord right here, C sharp dominant 7th. So let me show you real quick on the MIDI piano the chords that I played, and then I'll break down how you can make this chord progression, because this is one of the more simple ones, but it still has that R&B feel to it. So I'm in the key of D major, and I started on the 1 of the scale, which is going to be D right here, and I built out a D major 7th chord. And then the one that I'll explain, because you can see a few of the notes are out of the scale, which is going to give us that sound, and what you have to do to get like that R&B vibe to it is this C sharp dominant 7th chord, which is this right here. And then we drop into a B minor 7th chord right here. So as mentioned, we are in D major, right? So if we want to build out a D major 7th chord, which is going to be the first note in the scale right here, D, we just skip every other note. So skip this note in the scale right here that's highlighted, place one here, skip right here, place, skip, place. And now we have the D major 7th chord right here. Let me go ahead and loop this part. Then we're going to build out that C sharp dominant 7th chord. So I'm going to build out a 7th chord on C sharp. So skip every other note. There's a triad, skip, and then place. And then what we need to do is take these 2 notes right here. I'm holding control, hit the up arrow. We're going to sharpen these notes. And now we have that C sharp dominant 7th chord. And you can see that it gives us that nice like R&B feel. These 2 notes are outside of the scale, but that's what you're going to have to do to get that R&B feel. And then I just went ahead and built out a B minor 7th chord. So we have B right here, skip every other note. There's a triad, there's a 7th. And then I went ahead and went back to the C sharp. So real simple chord progression for this. I actually didn't really do any inversions because the pad I used for this just sounded really good played as is. So this is the pad that I used. I'm super excited to announce that the Beautiful Souls R&B Omnisphere bank that I created is out now and available. There'll be a link in the description. All the sounds are R&B influenced. I made all of them to sound perfect, have that smooth feel to it. There's pads, keys, bass, plucked basses, a bunch of leads, bunch of really nice sounds, and every single one of them just fits that R&B trap soul feel perfectly. For the effects on this, I have an EQ that's cutting out a lot of that low end, and then a little dip around 140 range, just a tiny bit so it can have room for that 808 and the plucked bass later on. But there's nothing else on this. Everything inside of that Omnisphere bank already has the processing on it, and it just sounds smooth. Next, you want to add a smooth bass line to fill out that low end. So as you can see, I just took the root notes of the chord progression and followed it with the bass. The processing on this is just a limiter that sidechains with the kick. So you can see I have it on compression here, and then sidechain is linked over to the kick. And then I have the ratio at about 3. The threshold and the ratio are just going to kind of depend on how much you want that bass to duck out when the kick hits. But to easily do that, all you need to do is go over to your kick. So just select your kick channel, go over, hover right here, and then hit sidechain to this track, and then it will sidechain over to it, and then you put a limiter on the bass, and now you'll be able to hit compression right here, and then you right click and hit kick, and then you can adjust your settings, and the bass will duck out when the kick hits. Adding a smooth synth lead is super important. So the goal for this honestly is to add enough melody but still leave room for the artist. All right, so I'm going to give you a few examples of a couple ideas for leads that you can kind of do when you're thinking about this. As mentioned, a call and response is really good for creating melodies around this and just leaving a lot of space. You want to have a whole bunch of space for the artist to do their thing. You don't want to get too much in the way. A nice little lead that just accents and stands out. So let me show you real quick. So that one's a little bit faster, but we can go with something a little bit slower. Let me see what I can come up with. So you're definitely going to want to have a lot of grace notes and then a lot of spacing in between, and just really focus on that call and response, because that's how you're going to get these leads to sound good. So you'll see this last note G sharp, again, it doesn't fall in the scale because it is going off that C sharp dominant 7th chord that we created, which does have that G sharp, and that's why it sounds good. And all this is a quick little scale run right up the notes. I went from C sharp to D over to E, and these two notes being close together are giving us that tension. And then that repeats over here again, nice and simple with a little bit of spacing in between there. And then over here we drop down to that G sharp, which again is part of that C sharp dominant 7th chord. So it sounds good, and it's different from the rest of these, which has a nice loop back right into the beginning of the melody. The lead I'm using for this is lead 4 right here inside of the Beautiful Souls preset bank. For the processing, I have EQ cutting out the low end, and then Shaper Box doing one of my favorite things that I use in a lot of my melodies and a lot of my beats is the panning that's going from left to right with the mix at about 21%. 21% and 11% are kind of my go-tos to just give it a little of that left and right movement, but not a lot, unless I really want it to be panning heavy. Plucked basses, stab basses are really good for these beats. Choosing the right sound for this is super important because it adds a nice aggressive like texture to the beat, but it also adds a really good rhythm. So this is just following the root notes of the chord progression and then that bass earlier as well. But what you want to do is have this play when your other bass isn't playing. And one of the best things you could do for this is when you have this plucked bass going is to have like a snap like this. I just wanted to show you how good it sounds when you have that snap, and then it's like two different variations. You have the pluck bass and the snap, and then you have the sine bass, and then you have the rest of the drums all playing, right? So let's go over here. I'm going to show you the preset I use for this. There's a bunch of plucked basses inside of the Beautiful Souls preset bank. As you can see, there's 4 of them. So you just get a nice plucked bass. Usually I just go ahead, throw this on cell, and then skip every other note and place a note. But you can create something cool like that too. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more to this. Then we could probably go right here. So you can just get creative with this and figure out like a way you want it to be. To me, when I'm adding vocals to these beats, it's kind of more just like ear candy. All right, so this vocal right here, I found from Splice and then just stretched it out to 8 bars. And I actually brought it up a whole octave. The effects processing on this is just some EQ, cutting out a lot of the low end, a little bit of that low mid that was kind of building up, a bunch of the high end. Then I have a pretty big reverb on it. We have a 3-second decay time, and it's brought up pretty high, widened it out just a little bit. And then another EQ that's cutting out a little bit more mid-range that was kind of sticking out when I was blending it in with the chords, and a tiny bit of the high end. Again, that's probably just from the reverb that I was cutting out. One of the things I kind of threw on last just to make sure that it fits really nicely. A lot of the times when you sort through Splice, you can find some pretty good R&B and soul vocals as long as you do like the right filtering for it. And then I like to just add processing to it, because without the processing, this is what it sounded like. Just standing out way too much, and I like to tuck it back again to leave room for the artist later when they get on it. So now we could jump into the drums. We have a kick, hi-hats, snare, and an open hat. The snare's hitting on the 3 just like the snap, except the 4th bar right here, we have this added note. Then we get into the hi-hat. The hi-hat is a simple 2-step with a couple rolls that you'll see right here, and right here. Let me leave them highlighted real quick so you can hear them. So So those are just kind of accenting the two-step. As you could see, I really did go pretty simple on this beat, but everything that has those little variations to it just makes it sound really, really good. So let's jump into this over here. All you need to do to get this fill right here after you do your two-step is go into third step right here, and you can see that these notes right here, all you got to do is click and we'll count over 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then when you place it like that, you'll get that triplet feel to it. So for this roll, we place one here, skip, place, place. And that's going to give us this one right here. You could also right click and then drag this up if you want to have it build up. And then over here, we have another triplet that's skipping 4, as you can see. Bring this over there, but it's dropped down to F, and then I just lowered the velocity. You can hold Alt and use the mouse wheel and then just lower these. And then another thing that you can do inside the hi-hat is go ahead and shift it over. See, that sounds really bad, right? It's just shifting the notes over, so not playing exactly on time. So you want to be careful using this. You don't want to use too much. So what I like to do is just press play and then bring this up until I hear that it kind of has that swing to it, but it's not sounding like it's offbeat. Then the open hi-hat is just hitting on the 1. This is an open hi-hat from the Resupply drum kit as well. The open hi-hat and the snap are from Resupply. And then the kick is just a pretty simple kick pattern that repeats except for this little double right here. So let me go ahead and play this. This double just adds a lot to it. Again, this is in cell. You can see that these two notes are just hitting right after each other. You just place them like that, and you can get a nice little bounce. If we get this video to 500 likes, I'll drop the download link to the sample, so make sure to hit that thumbs up. And also, if you want some curated sounds for R&B melodies, make sure to check out the Beautiful Souls Omnisphere preset bank. I will have a link in the description.